Police say they got him. The man who allegedly killed a mom and dad on a weekend hike with their daughters in Arkansas's Devil's Den State Park is under arrest. His name is Andrew James McGann. He was getting a haircut at the time detectives put him in cuffs. Even more shocking is his job, an elementary school teacher, and there are some major questions about his past, as parents of his former students are talking about the concerns they had when Mr. McGann was teaching their children. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. We have a lot to unpack today, as so many people in Arkansas are breathing a sigh of relief. Here's the most recent picture we have of Andrew James McGann, as he is now in the Washington County, Arkansas jail, being held without bond, accused of a double murder. This is the photo that authorities put out late last night announcing his arrest. Here is part of the news conference from KFSM TV.
Because of their hard work and investigative skill, we were able to take a monster off the streets and bring relief to Clinton and Kristen's precious girls. And to the rest of citizens of Arkansas.
Police say that McGann was arrested while he was getting a haircut yesterday just before 5 p.m. local time in Springdale, Arkansas. That's about a half hour north of Devil's Den State Park. This is video that was posted to social media by the barber who said he was in her chair when law enforcement walked in. And this is video that was posted to the salon's Facebook page in Spanish of those in the barbershop talking about what had just taken place. McGann, they say, didn't talk much when he came into the barbershop, but it was about 4 minutes into his haircut that detectives entered and arrested him. They say that detectives asked McGann if he was the owner of the vehicle that was parked out front, and he said yes. Now, the actual barber posted this on social media, quote, "So I'm cutting a guy's hair and I'm shaking because now there's cops and detectives. I told them I haven't swept up the hair in case they need it. 100 said they did. Y'all, I'm shaking." Mostly because it's starting to look like it could be the man they're looking for, but not too sure yet. She then posts, "Update, it was possibly him, y'all. I could have possibly cut the Devil's Den killer's hair. He left expletive up. I barely started the fade." She then comments, quote, "They said it was a double homicide. I asked if it was related to the Devil's Den incident. It's looking like it was. I'm going to wait until I know for sure." Now, when you look at the booking photo of McGann from the county jail, it does appear that he has an unfinished haircut. The barber also posted this video on social media of police searching a vehicle that appears to be a dark-colored four-door sedan that matches the description of the vehicle that Arkansas State Police say the suspect fled Devil's Den State Park in. Police confirmed in their news conference that McGann recently moved to Arkansas from Oklahoma to be a school teacher.
What I'll say is he just recently moved here and had gotten a job to work at a local school here.
In a now deleted Facebook post from June 12th, a public elementary school in Springdale, Arkansas, had a message from McGann that read, "My name is Drew McGann." So notice he's using his middle name there. "I'm thrilled to be part of the Bayari team this year as a third grade teacher." He also says in his free time, he loves going to concerts with friends, working out, and being outdoors. Now, I reached out to the Springdale Public Schools for comment, and the superintendent sent me this statement that reads, quote, "Springdale Public Schools can confirm that Andrew McGann was a teacher candidate hired for the upcoming school year who has not yet begun employment with the district. This individual has not at any time come into contact with Springdale students or families we serve. At this time, we cannot offer any additional information due to the ongoing investigation. At the appropriate time, additional information will be forthcoming. Our entire team extends our deepest condolences to the Brink family. Their children are especially in our thoughts and prayers." In putting this story together, I actually reached out to 4 different school districts in 3 different states because it appears that McGann moved from district to district, leaving jobs over the past couple of years. One parent is raising concerns about how McGann acted while teaching fourth graders at a school in Texas. And before I get into that, I do want to put the focus on what police say went down in Devil's Den State Park less than a week ago. It was on Saturday, July 26th, that Kristen and Clinton Brink were hiking with their 7 and 9-year-old daughters in Devil's Den State Park. This family was new to Arkansas just in the last couple of weeks, it seems. They moved from out of state. They had previously lived in South Dakota and Montana. Police say that McGann killed the parents in front of the 7 and 9-year-old girls. Those girls running to a visitor's station to call 911. This all happened in broad daylight around 2:30 in the afternoon, police say, on Saturday. The Brink family has released a statement saying that Clinton and Kristen died heroes. They were protecting their daughters. Clinton was going to start a new job on Monday. He was going to be delivering milk in Springdale, Arkansas. It seems that McGann, at least on the main social media channels, did not have a major digital footprint. We searched through Facebook, Instagram, and even TruthFinder looking for Andrew James McGann. We also searched James Andrew McGann at the time that was believed to be his name, and not much has come up. And that is somewhat surprising because at Law&Crime, we partner with TruthFinder and use it to get details on the people involved in our stories. And it's very rare that someone doesn't come up at all. Even if you don't work in true crime, TruthFinder can be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind, as it is one of the largest public records search services in the United States. And with a paid subscription service, you get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And by the way, right now, you can get 50% off your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/OTC. This is the picture that police put out of the suspect dressed all in black. And this is the sketch they also put out. They say that the suspect, who they called a person of interest at the time, was in sunglasses and wore fingerless gloves when they attacked the Brinks. Now, the suspect had also been seen driving away in a black four-door sedan, which again matches the description of the car that McGann allegedly drove to go get that haircut before he was arrested. Law enforcement has not said if they know what McGann's alleged motive was. He is now facing 2 counts of capital murder and he's being held without bond. But let's get back to his profession and some of the questions that we certainly have looking at where he has been over the past couple of years working in public elementary schools. Last year, McGann reportedly taught in Sand Springs, Oklahoma. That's near Tulsa. The district released a media statement and said that he resigned from the job to move out of state. They also say that he did go through a mandatory background check to be hired. Now, the year before that, he worked in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, in the public school system there, also outside Tulsa. The district there told me that he worked for them during the 23-24 school year as a 5th grade teacher, and he left that job for the same reason, to work out of state. And they also say that he passed a background check. Now, before that, it appears that McGann worked at a school in Flower Mound, Texas, which is northwest of Dallas. Here's a now deleted Facebook post from 2022 that's circulating on social media that is welcoming him to the team as a 4th grade teacher. And while his post is what you would expect from a teacher, trying to be very warm, be very friendly, there is a parent that is going public with what it was like to deal with Mr. McGann from her perspective. This mom posted on Facebook that McGann was inappropriate to young girls in the class, and she claims that McGann was allowed to resign without consequence. I reached out to the school district for comment. At this time, we have not heard back. The Brinks daughters, who ran to the visitor station to alert the authorities and call 911 after their parents were allegedly murdered right in front of them, were not injured in the attack, and they are staying with family. There's a GoFundMe for the family that is live right now. It has raised more than $35,000. Joining us now is retired police commander Mike King. He's the host of Profiling Evil and the author of the book Wolves in Sheep's Clothing, which is very fitting, I think, with what we're learning about this suspect today, Mike. What stands out to you? Originally, it was James Andrew McGann, but Arkansas authorities say it is actually Andrew James McGann is his name. But nonetheless, what do you make of this suspect?
You know, the first thing I went to, Chris, and thanks for mentioning the book, because I talk a lot about this in the book Wolves in Sheep's Clothing, is this idea of the different personas that people can appear to have. I mean, we have this public persona like you and I are putting on now, where we put our best foot forward as a teacher. Maybe this young man was putting his best foot forward as a teacher. He then moves to a different location, but we all have this public side. We also all have a private side to each of us, and that's kind of the side where maybe we allow our frustration to come forward. But maybe it's the place where our spouse or our closest friends get to see the warts that we have and some of the weird behavior that we might have. But the public and the private are usually kept within legitimate boundaries. The other side is the secret side, the Tasmanian devil that's hiding inside of all of us. And gratefully, folks like you and I and most of the people that are listening to this channel sit back and they say, I can't even imagine morally wanting to try to do anything even close to what's happened in this particular case and what this defendant is now charged with. But that's the secret side. And sadly, it's usually only the victims of crime who get to see this terrible secret side or secret persona.
Yeah, because he, on one hand, he was a teacher, and I had said in the intro to this, I mean, I reached out to 4 school districts in 3 different states for statements because he was about to work in Arkansas. He had worked in Oklahoma in 2 districts, and then Texas, and this was all within the last 5 years. If you were investigating this, like Arkansas State Police is, what stands out to you when you have a public school teacher who seemed to just move from town to town over the past couple of years?
Yeah, and isn't that a really important component of this, Chris? Because you have this jumping from location to location, and oftentimes we see this in these predators who they're really kind of chameleons on the outside. When you meet them, maybe you meet them and you're grabbing a Coke in the teacher lounge or over at the gas station, and you think, man, that's really a nice guy, and I really enjoy talking to him. But as you start to spend more time with them, you start to see things that really are troubling or red flags that start popping up. And oftentimes when you see people who are jumping from job to job, it's either because they're just not fitting in. Maybe that's just not the place for them. And I think we've all been in a job where it wasn't the place for us. But when you're in a profession that is allowing you to jump from location to location, especially a profession that's dealing with children, and allegations come forward that might suggest that there were inappropriate comments made or inappropriate classroom discussion or topics brought up, and you see someone that's really focused in, I want to just teach children, or I want to just be a scoutmaster, and they go to their local church and they're brand new in the area and they say, hey, I'm willing to go to camp with the boys. Well, holy cow, on first blush, we're thinking, oh man, finally somebody's willing to go to camp with the kids. But there's a reason why they're doing that in some of these cases, and sometimes it's predatory in nature. So you really want to see what the past behavior is to help predict what the current behavior or future behavior is. And we don't know anything about this particular fellow, and he's certainly innocent by every tenet that we all believe in until he's put in front of a court and adjudicated. But you start looking at this and you think, what's the purpose? What was his focus in school? Why did he leave from school to school? What were his personnel records going to reveal as far as interactions in the classroom or with other teachers? And is there anything in his background? Because how does this guy get through 4 years of college? He gets a teaching degree. He goes through what I assume would be some rudimentary psychological testing to see if this is the right place for him to be working. And then he makes it through a bunch of interviews. And again, it goes back to this chameleon personality type.
Yeah, and background checks. Each school district I reached out to made sure to include that he passed background checks. One thing that did stand out is last year, it was Sand Springs, Oklahoma, which is outside Tulsa. And he had left that job. The statement from the school district that they released to the media said he left the job to go work out of state. And then he's in Arkansas this year. Before that, he was in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And in their statement, they say he resigned to go out of state, but he stayed in the Tulsa area. So it's interesting that it was like the same pattern between school to school. What do you make of, like, he goes and gets a haircut? This was someone I was thinking as this investigation was going on, like he could be anywhere. But he was only a half hour up the road going back into what appears to be a very normal life after allegedly having done this.
Yeah. And is the haircut just him going about the normal course of business, getting ready for a new school year? Or is the haircut an attempt to change his identity somewhat or change what they're looking for in that particular case? The other thing that becomes really interesting is whether or not this event that occurred, the murder of this mother and father, if it was a targeted kind of an event or if it was opportunistic in nature, and who were truly the targets. What was the purpose of it? And I think we're going to find out more about that as this goes on. And I know a lot of people are focusing and wondering if this has to do with the children of those parents who were murdered, and we just have so little information at this point that we don't know. But I'm always a guy that likes to cast balance in these discussions and talk about things a little more on a level playing field while we wait for evidence to really come forward to help us create real theories. And so while part of me might say, okay, there are people suggesting that there might be an attraction toward children and that was the primary target and that the parents saved the children, and undoubtedly they saved the children in this thing, or they stood up and took the brunt of this assault. But if the children were a focus, why didn't the predator then take them once he had eliminated the threat of the parents? And so again, it might be this idea, and another topic that we talk about in the book Wolves in Sheep's Clothing is this idea of how organized defenders can become disorganized. And so in all his fantasies, he might have worked out this perfect plan, but once he starts this process of murdering somebody, and not just one, but two people, and seeing everything fall apart in front of him, all of a sudden it's pretty darn easy to envision that this predator went from organized to disorganized. And that could have thrown out all of whatever his potential target was and what his focus was from the beginning. So we just know so little, and yet it gives us a chance to talk about principles as we wait for evidence to start to unfold.
A piece of evidence that stood out to me that we do know is that the car that he was driving, this Mazda four-door sedan, they believed it was a Mazda. It had the license plate covered with duct tape or like an electrical tape, which I would assume if you had just committed the crime he's accused of committing, like you don't have time to do it in the parking lot to cover it up if this was like this crime of opportunity. The other thing with the car that stood out to me, and I'd love your thoughts on this, apparently he was driving it still to this, it was in the front of the barber shop where he was arrested. And it just goes to your point about the wolf in sheep's clothing of almost like if he did what he's accused of doing, like he just tried to remove himself from what had happened in the park and then went on in the vehicle that everybody in Arkansas has been looking for the last several days.
Yeah, the one thing, maybe you have the answer to this, Chris, because the one thing I haven't been able to really uncover in my own mind is were those pieces of tape or electrical tape or duct tape, were they changing letters on the license plate? Were they covering the license plate in totality? And was there ever any indication that this was an Oklahoma tag from the moment that this image was released? But all of that, I think the most important thing that you picked up on there that I hope that law enforcement is really focusing on is that there was absolute pre-planning and intent to deceive, at least in the identification of the vehicle. And maybe there are enough of those vehicles on the road that he felt comfortable in saying, yeah, I'm driving the same color car, but look, my hair's short and my plate's different. Or he just, again, is completely disorganized and so focused on the fantasy of committing that crime, whether it was homicide in hopes of getting access to children or whether it was just plain a homicide, that he was completely out of touch with all of those ancillary things that were going on.
And then just lastly for you, Mike, because we have this case that's taking place in the Springdale, Northwest Arkansas area. He's from Tulsa, and that's where he moved from recently. And then before that, he was in Flower Mound, Texas, which is northwest of Dallas. for investigators now, what do you do if you look at this very brutal crime? And I mean, there has to be the possibility that this isn't the first time. I'm not saying that it is or it isn't, but how do you look into that to try and figure out whether or not this was the first time that this happened?
Yeah, you're spot on, Chris. And I think that's something that law enforcement now has to go back, because we don't know if allegations were made, even against this individual, that law enforcement didn't have enough evidence to be able to pursue and create charges. It could have been the kind of thing that created that flight from one location to another, or from one job to another too. So we'll see law enforcement going back, re-examining cases where maybe it became a case of intelligence, or a case that was even turned down by a prosecutor, that could potentially be revisited and now stacked on top of this thing. We might even see, because of those kinds of things, involvement from groups like the FBI, who would jump in then and start looking at the interstate types of criminal activity.
All right, Mike King, always great to have you on Law and Crime. What a story we're covering here. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
We are expecting McGann to be in court tomorrow in Arkansas. For On the Case, presented by Law and Crime, I'm Chris Stewart. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. We'll see you next time.